Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Light Sports Ramble. As always, I'm joined with my co-host, Evan Watallison, and today we are going to talk about the Heisman Trophy Watch, and then we're also going to get into the traditional Light Sports Ramble upset episode. Changed a little bit since Evan is co-hosting with me, but we've got 4 great games where we think there's going to be an upset in the making. We're going to discuss those, and as we move in, Evan, I do want to give thanks to our Twitter followers. Today we had an overwhelming amount of response for topics. I mean, we had as much as Bo Ryan in college basketball. We had Alabama and the legacy. Also talking about the new rule about making quarterbacks safer. We also had stuff about people going into treatment for the bullying. I mean, it was just an amazing outcry, Evan. I know you had DM'd me about, man, it looks like we're getting a lot of input today.
Yeah.
So all of these topics that these fans are giving to us is great. And I had mentioned in a tweet that we're now able to build our content. It means you guys want us to keep rambling. So I know you and I were talking about it. I mean, with Bo Ryan, I mean, just give the fans a little bit of an overview of how we're going to use their content as we move forward next week.
Well, we were talking pre-show too, and we're going to figure out, next week on when we can start discussing the different topics. We want to keep Mondays recapping the Packer game from the Sunday before, and then Thursday we want to keep being a Packer preview. But we're going to try to, the other days during the week, the Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, try to work in these other topics for you guys, so we keep the topics coming, and we will get to your topics. So don't get discouraged if we're not talking about it today.
Yeah, I mean it's not like we're getting one topic, and like when we first started the ramble and said, hey, let's run with it. We've actually got to be a little bit more strategic now, but I love it. I mean, and I'm real excited about doing next week's Bo Ryan topic because you're covering the Badgers. And I'm excited too. That's going to be a great one. So we're going to have a little bit of Bo Ryan next week, a little bit of college football next week. Today we're going to stay on the end. Well, we're going to go a little college football today. Let's jump right into it. The Heisman race. I mean, there's a number of people, Evan, but you and I both think this comes down to a 2-man race. And so I'm going to let you get started. I mean, the 2 top candidates right now are Winston from Florida State, Manziel from Texas A&M. You and I are a little bit torn on this, so this is going to be a good debate right now. But I'm going to let you go first with who you think is going to win the Heisman, and then I'm going to chime in with why I think my guy is going to win the Heisman.
Up until last Thursday, I was looking at the QB from Oregon. What's his name?
Mariota.
Yeah, that in front of you. Mariota. I was thinking Mariota was going to run away with it going into last Thursday, but I think that Stanford game just knocked him off the pedestal completely. And if you look, I like Winston. He's a heck of a young quarterback, playing, like he's a grown man out there, making all the throws, leading Florida State to victory after victory. But 2 losses or not, just look at what Johnny Manziel's doing. They may have lost those 2 games, but both games they lost, he was the best football player on the field. His numbers have been outstanding. He's the most, in my opinion, he's the most electrifying man in college football right now. He's just, everything he does, he takes over a game. You got the stats in front of you?
Yeah, I got the stats, and I definitely.
So, what's Manziel's passing numbers for the year?
I'll give you Manziel, and then I'll give you Winston's. I mean, when you compare number to number, you're absolutely right. I mean, Manziel has 3,300, little bit over 3,300 yards passing. Winston has 2,600 yards passing. 26 TDs for Winston, 31 for Manziel. Interceptions, Manziel a little bit more, but he's throwing the ball more. He's got 11 interceptions. Winston has 7. Manziel's beating him in completion percentage. 73% of his passes have been completed for Johnny Manziel. 69 for Winston. Still not bad. And then they do the quarterback ranking in college a little bit different, but Manziel's ranking is an 88.6. Winston's is 92.7. Then if you get...
See, I think if you're on ESPN, I believe they use that QBR saying that ESPN decided to create out of the blue a couple of NFL football seasons ago.
Yeah, I
think that's actually what they're using. If you look at their NFL QB numbers on ESPN, it's going to be very similar because they're using that QBR thing.
Yeah, and then here's the biggest discrepancy, and this totally would point the finger in Johnny Manziel's favor. He's got 611 rushing yards, and believe it or not, Winston only has 157, which surprised me because when I watch, it seems like he's running all over the place. And Manziel has 8 rushing touchdowns, and Winston has 3. So
the reason why I was having you read over those numbers right now is you just look at those numbers and, at the quarterback position at least, Manziel is pretty much blowing him out of the water for the most part. The Heisman Trophy is not about the best player on the best team. It's about the best player overall, and I think that is Johnny Manziel. I think a lot of people are kind of sour on him with the offseason that he had, the attitude that people perceive them having, the whole autograph gate and all that other stuff. But put all that aside, put all the off-the-field stuff aside, forget about it. It has nothing to do with his on-the-field performance. Just look what he's doing on the field, and you have to give him the Heisman Trophy again. He needs to be the second player since Archie, first player since Archie Griffin, second player overall to win 2 Heisman Trophies in a row. He's just the best player in college football, in my opinion.
And when you make a good point, because personally, when I did the Ramble, and this is before you and I were co-hosting, I called Johnny Manziel out as being immature. Not knowing what the rule is and not putting himself in that situation. But I agree with you, and I'm not holding that against his play because I think he's a phenomenal player. I just think upstairs he doesn't have it all off the field, and he needs to grow up a little bit.
He's still young, though. I think, just turned 21.
Yeah, I know. I understand that.
Look where you were at when you were 20, 21 years old. I'm sure you liked having a good time. I know I did. You're just having a good time.
I did, and the thing that I'll go there, and I won't get into that part of the ramble I had, but just to recap on that though is he does have to. You got to not put yourself in a situation knowing where you're at, and that's a college athlete. They need to know that, and so. But I'm not holding that against him because I'm totally for what he did. I mean, and you and I talked about this. I have no problem with a college athlete doing that. The problem I have is wherever his guidance was coming from, that's the person that needs to take some of that blame too, because they shouldn't put him in a situation where he's going to get in trouble. I mean, he's got a number of advisors, he's got peers, he's got mentors, and they should keep him out of those situations. I always had a saying as a coach, perception is reality. And don't put yourself in a situation where somebody can perceive something differently. So I say we just end that.
I think his advisors knew exactly what they were doing for the fact that, the whole issue with the autograph thing, there is no money trail. So I think they actually knew exactly what they were doing, but that'll be a different topic for another day, though. Yeah,
it could be. Back to where we were going, numbers right there, and what you're saying, your strong case for Johnny Manziel is hit it on the head. His numbers are definitely that much better than Winston. What's going to help Winston in this, of course, is that his team has a chance to play for the national championship. But like you said, that's not what the Heisman is. The Heisman is for the best player in college football. Now, my debate with Winston is, when I look at it, is I feel that he has been able to also control and go into a situation where he is leading that team also, and he's leading them to victory, which, again, this is nickel and dime stuff, right? You and I don't get a vote. You'd vote for Manziel. I'd vote for Winston. When I look at the things, and you're talking about quarterback rating being close and all that, when I look at it, 31 touchdowns to 26 and the passing yards, my thing there is that Winston's team, they're blowing teams out. And so he's not getting to play the whole game. And so sometimes when I look at the actual stats, Evan, Manziel's numbers might be a little bit more inflated because he is playing a little bit more than Winston is. And so when I look at it, I feel that on the level of quarterback play, I think they're neck and neck. And so if we just went by stats, I can't disagree with you. Manziel has the better stats, but there's also times where I think, example for the last game, Winston didn't even play in the fourth quarter, and he didn't have to keep throwing the ball because his teams were getting the lead. And so that's where I go into that argument that I think they're both great quarterbacks, and just where I am, I'd give the nod to Winston. And I'm not basing it totally on the actual passing yardage stats and the touchdowns and those things.
Yeah, they're both great quarterbacks. I like Winston a lot. I think he's going to be an exceptional pro quarterback. But like thinking of Florida State, the problem Florida State's going to have is they play in the ACC. They don't play against some of the better talent in college football. And the argument that Manziel's going to have is he's putting up those numbers against the likes of Alabama, Missouri, Mississippi State, Mississippi, teams that have traditionally a strong defense. He's tearing those defenses up. That's what's going to help Manziel in this quest for his second Heisman Trophy is just the schedule, playing in the SEC compared to playing in the ACC.
Well, and, there is going to be that because, the thing is, too, I'm in Pittsburgh, so you got Florida State, Pittsburgh. I mean, of course, against Pittsburgh, you can put numbers up, and then he's going to come out of the game because Florida State's winning by 40, right?
Yeah, and that Florida State defense is just incredible, too.
It is.
Texas A&M's defense is awful.
Exactly, and so that's where I'm coming on my side is that, Winston, we're not seeing him put into that situation where he's got to play the whole game and put up the numbers. He does have a good defense. So, I mean, right now where you and I are at, Evan, it's basically tick for tack, right? Because we both have a good argument going on here. And it's even that way when you look at the expert poll on ESPN. And I'll show you where we're at right now. I have it up on the computer. You got Winston, with 76 based on the experts poll. You got Manziel with 63, and then there's nobody even close after that. Like we said,
there's no other contenders out there.
No, and if Mariota wouldn't have lost, he might have been up there, but I think he still would have been a distant third.
Yeah. I think the guy from Baylor, his name escapes me at the moment. I think, what he's doing at Baylor this year, he's the only other guy in college football that comes anywhere close, especially after what he did at Oklahoma.
Exactly, and I have it up. It's Bryce Petty.
There we go.
The quarterback down in Baylor. But what's happening here, too...
it was Petty, but I didn't want to, say the wrong name and seem stupid.
Well, yeah, because that's what I'm here for. I'm the idiot with an opinion. You're the guy that has all the facts all the time. I mean, that's the way that this show...
You got the facts today.
Well, that's because I have a computer in front of me, But that's the way our show is going, Evan. I'm the idiot with the opinion. You're the guy that backs everything up with the factual information, and I'm okay. And I'm okay with that. I'm willing to be that guy. So, I mean, the thing that I'm looking at, though, when I look at some of these other names on here, we talk about the wins and losses that shouldn't matter. And, I'm going down and I see Boyd from Clemson. He's got 2 total points, and I'm looking at
Winston outperformed him big time.
Yeah, and then you got Bridgewater, though, at Louisville, and he's got 1 point. I mean, these are good quarterbacks. And, I'm not...
That Central Florida game, or I think Central Florida ended up beating them, that killed Bridgewater's Heisman candidacy. Because for a guy like Bridgewater coming out of Louisville to be up there for the Heisman, he has to finish undefeated. And, they slipped up. He had a great performance, but his team slipped up, and, that's why he's only down there with, 1 vote.
Yeah, and the one last point that we'll make on this, and I know we want to get into the upset special, and you and I always talk about our time, but do you think that in the Heisman race, and when you're talking about college football and winning the ultimate award of a Heisman, that it all comes down to consistent play week in and week out, being able to do the same thing over and over, because that one bad game, you're never going to overcome it to win the Heisman? What do you think about that theory? Is it a consistent year and overcoming a bad game is nearly impossible? Or do you think somebody can have a bad week and overcome it?
Well, I think somebody could have a bad week and overcome it if their team is undefeated or only has a loss or two. Because if you're playing at a team that's hovering around 500, that you can be putting up the best stats in the world, that you have that one game, and you're done. Bridgewater, his issue was he lost to Central Florida. He's coming, he's in a tough predicament as it is, and it's just got made even worse for him. But if you're going to have a bad performance during the season, you got to finish undefeated. So you're talked about all the time in the national media, and it's overall though you have to be consistent the entire year. Like Manziel, Winston, they've been very consistent all year. The issue that happens with how do you say his name, Mariota?
Yep,
right?
Mariota.
The issue that happened with Mariota is his bad games coming towards the end of the season. That's what his problem is. There's only I don't know what the rest of the teams play, but Wisconsin has 3 games left on the year. So there's like 3-4 games left for most teams. And if you have a bad game later in the season, it's going to sting even more because that's what the voters are really going to remember. So if you're going to have a bad game, it has to happen early. And if you're going to have a bad game, you have to be on a team that's very good. Otherwise, you have to be consistent all year and just put up huge numbers like Manziel's doing right now. He plays for a 2-loss team this year. I believe they were a 2-3-loss team last year, but yeah, he still gets the Heisman.
Yeah, and again, based off total stats and total numbers, Manziel is by far in the lead, and Winston will never catch him. I mean, I gave you the numbers before. Winston is nearly 700 yards behind him. He's not making that up in a month. There's no way. I mean, Manziel would have to stop playing for that to happen.
Yeah, unless his arm falls, unless Manziel's arm falls off,
which it doesn't. So, and I don't want to get into it now. I mean, we've pushed 16 minutes saying we were going to try to stay 7 to 10 on the Heisman. But the thing is, when you and I start debating and talking, it always ends up this way. So. Yeah. Getting into whether or not Manziel is NFL ready and able to play in the NFL, that'll definitely be toward our draft time sometime in the spring, because I know you and I will still be doing this, but that is definitely a different time for us to talk about that. But just so the listeners know, Evan and I are torn on this. He's going for Manziel. I think Winston's the Heisman Trophy winner. But
we always agree. Come on now.
We do. And here's the thing. It's almost like I can't disagree with you because I see the numbers.
So that's strong.
I see the numbers, and you could give it to Manziel. I'm not going to sit there and jump up and down on my end table if Manziel wins. I think he's deserving. I just think from
it'd be fun to watch though if he did.
Nobody wants to see me dance on my table, Evan. Come on now. There's a reason. There's also a reason I don't put my face on camera. So, coupled with no face on the camera, they certainly don't want to see me dance on an end table. That would be bad. And I'd also worry about my health because knowing me, I would probably fall off the end table.
And we don't want you to fall into the table and break a leg or something. So
no, as long as I don't hurt my throat and can keep talking. Some people may think that, may want me to hurt my throat so I can't talk. But let's get into the upset special. You and I had talked in the pre-chat about 4 games where we think some possible upsets can come, and I'm just going to go down them. And I'll let you take the lead on this. The first game we talked about was the Ravens and the Bears, and we're going to discuss that game because it is, of course, near and dear to our hearts as Packer fans. It's an NFC North team, but you got the Ravens going to Chicago. So let's discuss this. Where do we think this game is going to end up?
I feel the Ravens will win it. You look at the Bears. The Bears, they're still on their backup quarterback. Their starting corner Tillman is out for the rest of the regular season. Their defense was a mess before, and it's going to be even a bigger mess now. And the Ravens they're desperate to try to stay in that race for the division. The Bengals are, looking possibly going to be running away with it, and the Ravens, if they lose, the Bengals are probably going to run away with it. So the Ravens need this win bad, and I think the Ravens will do it. The Bears are just too banged up.
And here's where we go back to it. I agree with you. And this is why it's the game that we're discussing. Ravens and Bears. And I think the one thing the Ravens can do that the Packers had a problem with against McNown is getting pressure on him. And you and I,
Suggs is a beast.
Yeah, you and I both agree on this that McCown is nowhere near more than an average quarterback in this league. Packers made him look like an all-pro. I think the Ravens' defense makes him the quarterback that we think he is, which is an average quarterback.
Yeah.
I think the Ravens are going to cause some turnovers. I don't care that the game's in Chicago. The home field advantage to me is really null in this game. The Ravens have enough, I think. The Bears' defense has been giving up some yards on the ground. I think Ray Rice can get established in this game. Flacco's going to check down to him a little bit. And I believe that the Ravens are going to take care of the Bears at Chicago, which will be good for the Packers. As we talked about yesterday, I am so hoping the Giants win. And you were right. I did pick the Ravens over the Packers when the Packers beat them. So hopefully that was a good omen yesterday by me picking the Giants for Packer fans. But moving on to the next game, and I'll start off with this game since I am in Steeler Nation. Lions at the Steelers. And I think the Steelers are going to pull this upset off. I think that the Steelers are in desperate mode. I don't think the Steelers can make a push for the playoffs, but I think the Steelers are playing for some pride right now. I think they are playing a little bit better. I know the rumor was out about Big Ben wanting to get traded, and I couldn't believe that even came out anywhere. But I believe that the Steelers are going to be able to pull this off because Big Ben, with that pass rush from the Lions, the best quality that Ben has is he is hard man to take down, Evan. That guy does not go down. That guy does not go down easy. And even though their offensive line is banged up, as usual, as it has been for the last 4 years, I think that Ben's going to have enough time. Antonio Brown is coming on strong right now, and I think Ben can hook up with him because he's going to avoid the rush, he's going to extend the play, and he's going to be able to connect with Brown, I feel, on a couple big plays. And then also I think the X factor is Bell in the backfield. The Packers ran pretty good against the Lions, and I think the Steelers can do enough with Bell to be able to actually control the clock. Now, I actually think this turns into a shootout. I think we're going to see 30 on both sides because that Lions offense is really good and the Steelers defense is really bad. But I think offensively is the X factor when they lace it up at Heinz Field on Sunday. But I think the Steelers are going to take this one. What do you think?
I think they will too. And you brought up before you brought up the Lions don't play well on the road. They haven't in a number of years, and the fact that I don't like the corners of the Lions. I think a quarterback like Ben Roethlisberger, Big Ben, I think if given time, and it takes a lot to get him down, given time, I think Roethlisberger can torch them through the air. Especially, I think Heath Miller is going to have a big game. That's a name that people keep forgetting to mention in Pittsburgh is Heath Miller. He is a damn good tight end, and I think Roethlisberger has good success finding him. And I think Sanders, is it Sanders, right? One of the outside guys, Sanders.
Yep, they got Sanders. They got Sanders and Brown.
I think they're going to give fits to these Lions corners, and I see the Steelers having a big game, and I think the defense is going to do just enough to to stop the Lions, just enough to put up more points than them. But I agree. I see the Steelers getting the win.
Well, and for Packer fans, that would be great also. Let's move on to an AFC North pretty big game. I mean, this game right here could be the telling signs of how this division is going to end up for the year. You got the Browns going to the Bengals. And I'm going to let you take the lead on this one because the Browns were your sleeper team this year. And now this could be the game where they actually have to go in and prove that they deserve to be talked about as a playoff team.
Well, first comment I'm going to make is if the Browns played this much better without Brandon Weeden on the field, why is he still on the team? Because I believe Weeden started out 0-2. Hoyer came in, 1-2 in a row. Then he gets hurt. Weeden comes in. They lose a couple. Now Campbell comes in, and they win. If the Browns play so much better without Weeden, then why play him? But aside from that, the defense of the Browns is very good and they're very physical. And if you're able to shut down and neutralize A.J. Green, the Bengals don't have enough on offense to beat you. If you put pressure on Dalton and force him to make other checks besides Green, it's going to be very hard for the Bengals to move the football. And after the Packers jumped out to their lead, the Packers for a while had a very hard time moving the football against the Browns. And they at that particular time were a very explosive offense, and the Browns were able to give the Packers fits. I think the Browns offense can do just enough to put points on the board, especially with Campbell at quarterback right now. He's playing so much better than Brandon Weeden. And I think the Browns defense is able to slow down the Bengals offense. And I see the Browns, my sleeper team at the beginning of the year, because of their defense, which I also thought Weeden would play a little better, and they still have Trent Richardson, but that's besides the point. I think the Browns pull off the win, and they make that division even tighter with the Browns, and as we already discussed, the Ravens all winning and the Bengals losing this weekend.
Well, I'm going to go back to one of our first ever rambles, Evan, and I don't even know if you remember. We talked about, is Brandon Weeden the answer in Cleveland? I don't know if you remember that ramble.
I remember that.
Do you remember who I said I thought should be starting for that team back then?
Did you say Campbell?
I said it should. Hoyer. I said Campbell. I said Jason Campbell.
Right, you did.
If they want to try to win now, they need to play Jason Campbell. It finally took him about 7 weeks to figure this out. But the reason I said it is
Hoyer played some good football in that time frame too, though.
He did, and then he got hurt. But I think right now Campbell has had a little bit more time now to learn the offense. Maybe this is the best thing that happened to him. But I think what Campbell gives you is he just gives you the veteran presence. The guy that's going to, and I'll compare his style and the way he's playing right now, and he's nowhere near the level of Alex Smith, but because of the record, but he's pretty similar in the sense that he's a smart guy, and he's not going to try to force stuff down the field and turn the ball over. And Cleveland can't afford to turn the ball over. But I think where they win it this week, and you mentioned it, they're going to win it on defense. And I heard this in passing. I had ESPN on, our NFL network. I can't remember which one, and it was last evening. And they were going over and previewing this game. Andy Dalton struggles against the Browns. He always has. And I couldn't catch the stats, and I couldn't catch where the struggles were. But that played in my head a little bit because this Browns defense is extremely good. They get to the quarterback. They tackle well, the things that we're talking about the Packers need to do. But that Brown defense is very good, and I'm in total agreement. I think the Browns take down the Bengals, and now all of a sudden you've got a 3-team race for that division. And on the far outside chance, and for my Steeler Nation fans that listen, it's pretty much 1 in a million chance. But if the Steelers would win, the Browns would beat the Bengals, it doesn't mathematically eliminate the Steelers at this point. I mean, it's a long way to go, but you know what's going to happen is it's going to make that division really tight, Evan.
Yeah, it would.
And so the last game, we got the 49ers at the Saints. And we had mentioned yesterday, or 2 days ago in the power rankings, 49ers struggling a little bit. And I said, you know, the Saints are playing really well right now. But where I'm going to go with this one, and you can give your insight to the game, I think the 49ers actually go into New Orleans and they beat the Saints at home where they are very tough to beat. I mean, not many teams go into New Orleans and beat the Saints, but I think this is the game where the 49ers finally get away from all their confusion on offense. They get back to some of that read option stuff because I think if they do that against the Saints, that's how they're going to beat the Saints is with that read option. And they had actually mentioned this on NFL Network, and you and I were mentioning this. The reason Kaepernick is struggling this year is the wide receivers are not getting open, and the main reason, there's no Crabtree. So I think they've got to get back to that read option without having the likes of a Crabtree. What do you think about that?
I'm right there with you with the 49ers getting the win against the Saints. And I want to do a quick rewind 2 weeks when the Jets played the Saints. And you look at how the Jets did it. I believe Ivory had close to 40 carries and over 100 yards rushing. And the Saints, they struggled that game stopping the run. I think the 49ers, mixing in a little read option, run Frank Gore, run with Michael James, run whoever else they have a running back, and just run the ball down the Saints' throat to keep the, Drew Brees and company off the field and just run it down their throats. And I think if they play a ball control offense, incorporate a little bit of read option like you were saying, and for the love of God, give the ball to Frank Gore. I think, and it's not just because I'm playing him in fantasy football this week. That's not why I'm saying that. Give the ball to Frank Gore and take some pressure off Kaepernick. And I think the 49ers win this game because the Saints showed 2 weeks ago that if you run at them, they're going to struggle. That defense has been playing better than anyone thought this year, including you and I, but the defense isn't that good. And if they can't stop the run very well. I think that's what Jim Harbaugh is going to do. He's going to get back to what he does best and what he did at Stanford and play some power football, and the 49ers are going to win the game.
Well, like you, I'm glad you said that because guess who I have as a running back in my fantasy team also? Mr. Gore.
Frank Gore.
Yeah, so give him the ball 40 times because if he gets the ball 40 times, he's getting 200 yards. And so, yes, you and I have the same running back. I hope Frank Gore tears him up because I need to.
They already had Chris Johnson tear up the Colts yesterday, so Frank Gore does it too. I'm really looking good.
You're sitting pretty in your league then, aren't you?
Yeah.
So
very pretty.
So there you have it, folks. So a little bit different format on our upset special, a little bit more in-depth. But I think, Evan, the 4 games we picked, I hope we're talking on Monday that we were picking right because 2 of those games are NFC North games, and we really could use a Steelers win. We really could use a Baltimore win. And
yes, we could.
With my omen picking against my beloved Packers, that would be awesome because that would put us right back into the talk. And then I'm not saying people are going to forget about Rodgers, but it would help people ease the pain of not having Rodgers if all of that falls into place on Sunday. And to be honest,
I agree.
The Packers, nobody's giving them a chance this weekend. Every show that I look at that has predictions, I haven't seen anybody pick the Packers yet, which to me is a good sign.
I guess they're 6.5-point underdogs right now.
Yeah, it was 5 when I left this morning for work, and I haven't seen the latest line. Let them keep building it. Because like I said, my heart says the Packers can go in there and play, but when I look at it realistically and I withdraw myself from that, it was just about the concerns. But I just got to tell the listeners, Evan, and because we've got to joke with them every once in a while. What was the time limit that we were going to try and stay in today?
We're going to try to get within 15, but no longer than 25. Let me take a guess where we're at.
Yeah,
I'd say we're at 33 minutes.
You're right on. 33 minutes and 11 seconds. And the funny thing is that you and I could talk another 33 minutes and 11 seconds.
I'm sure we definitely could.
About something. But with that said, Evan, I know it's Friday night, and again, I put it out on my YouTube channel today. I feel honored to be able to join I guess I can't call it the mic, but to join me on the Red Light Sports Ramble, it's almost a blessing in disguise. Something that started out as a dare for me has turned into, just so you know, you probably don't even know this number. This is the 96th episode of the Red Light Sports Ramble. 96. And I am so honored now, though, to have a co-host to help bring the Red Light Sports Ramble to another level. I really appreciate it. You and I both love doing it, and I just love chatting with you every day about sports. It's the highlight of my day, believe it or not. I got a lot of great things going on. Got a lot of great things going on in my life, but I love the hour that we spend together talking sports. And my last thing to the fans is keep the topics coming. The topics we got today have just filled us up for another week or 2 weeks, Evan. And so, again, thanks to the Twitter fans. And that's all I have, and you can wrap it up with whatever you want before we let the fans enjoy their weekend.
Well, I think you nailed it right on the head. Thanks for the topics. We're going to get to them, so hold tight. Don't get discouraged. Keep them coming. And it's a pleasure to do this with you. You invited me, at the beginning of the year to talk about sleeper teams, and now it's turned into a weekly, a 2 times a week, and now a Monday through Friday thing, which I'm very appreciative of because I love talking sports. And when you work human services, you don't get to talk a lot of sports. So
yeah.
I really enjoy it.
You know, it's funny, in the workplace you can talk a little bit, but not at this level. And so we've got some other things brewing. We won't let that out to the fans yet because it's still in the early works. But I'll tell you what, people, we're really branding the Red Light Sports Ramble. We appreciate all of your support. Because of you, this is why we do it. Evan and I will see you at the next Red Light. Have a great weekend, everyone. We'll get at you on Monday.